I think Houston's in the driver's seat there. I mean, the way that their bullpen set up beautifully for tonight because they didn't have to use Davinsky or Giles.
And the fact when they were down game 2 and they came back and won 7-6 and 11.
Yeah, the only thing is I actually texted Grant about it, about maybe they should have brought Davinsky in the 10th after Giles pitched the 9th. Bring Davinsky in to try to close out the 10th instead of trying to go Giles with 2 innings. But they got out of it. George Springer is starting to hit the tar out of the ball too. That's huge.
Game 4 tonight.
It's a big one because Kershaw's going tomorrow night. So
my job is actually running. My job is actually doing the games for the Fox app.
Yeah. Keuchel's practically unbeatable in
Alex Wood is going tonight.
Yeah. We got 2 minutes, guys.
Yep.
But Keuchel's nearly unbeatable in Houston. I do miss the big hill out there in center, though.
I don't.
I like it from a uniqueness standpoint, but I get that from a safety standpoint.
It was starting to become a injury concern. There were players who were running up it like spraining ankles. And
more people were hitting it up there. It used to be a great novelty thing when it was only a couple people a year would hit it.
It was great and that stadium has been open for almost 20 years already. Yeah. It was a great novelty thing for the first couple of years, but then it just wore off.
I remember Cal hit one to that hill. Yeah, he almost had inside the park home run in Houston that year.
Yep. All right. I'm going to go live now, guys.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. I'm Michael Lindbaum, he's Bernie Deal, and we're here at the WBGR studios in Atlanta, Maryland. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, you can watch the show on Facebook Live as well via the WBGR and Txht Facebook pages. And I already did all the sharing, so I actually got a lot of social media stuff out of the way. So I'll just throw this out there real quick because we're going to be talking about it because I'm wearing the jersey. NWHL starts today, 1:30 p.m. Metro Riveters versus the Boston Pride at Prudential Center before the New Jersey Devils host the Arizona Coyotes.
Yep, the thing that we've been hyping up the last couple of weeks with the Metropolitan Riveters and the New Jersey Devils having that nice agreement now. You're going to have doubleheader hockey at the Rock today. Yep. So it's going to be interesting. Devils coming off a big shootout win last night against Ottawa after losing a 2-goal lead in the last 2 minutes. But Ottawa already has lost 5 games in a shootout or overtime this year, 11 games in the season, but they've only lost 1 regulation game. So they're still right there in the mix with Tampa Bay and the Atlantic. But that should be a really special day for hockey, and if you're in the Newark area or even the New York City metropolitan area, get on out to the Prudential Center and support not just the NHL but also the NWHL. It should be a really good time out there for everyone that does make the trip.
And I've said this several times too, there are many instances where the women's game is much better than watching the men's game. And these two teams, I know it. If you go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TXHT Hockey, we have our exclusive episode up for this past week, which was with Dan Rice, the feature writer of the National Women's Hockey League. Him and I go in depth about this upcoming season, a lot of changes coming to play, like the Olympic players not playing in the NWHL this year. And obviously this right here, the players are amped. He lives in that New Jersey area. He talks to the Riveters all the time. He knows members on the Pride as well. And just listening to them talk about this game today. And of course, you also have the Connecticut Whale versus the Buffalo Buttes at 2:30 today in Connecticut. But those two teams, Boston and Metro Riveters, they're extremely excited, and I think everyone in the Prudential Center is going to be treated to a really, really good game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's better than the Coyotes-Devils game tonight.
Well, it could be a spirited matchup tonight, being that Arizona's going to want to salvage something in the New York metro area this weekend. They are a team that is seriously struggling right now. I think 0-9-1 now, or 0-8-1, something like that.
They're the only winless team in the league.
So they're going to be coming out, especially having a day off yesterday, and New Jersey playing back-to-back home games, which is a novelty that some teams rarely get in the NHL. So
the Caps.
It's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out, and hopefully our good friend of the show, Anya Badalino, scores a goal for the Connecticut Whale today. That'd be awesome to put a little cherry on top of the opening day in the National Women's Hockey League.
How's this? I know Anya.
Come on, Anya.
I know Anya isn't watching this right now. She's getting ready for her game.
Absolutely.
Because of the 2:30 start time. I'm going to put this out there right now. If Anya scores a goal today, I will buy her jersey. There you go.
Score a goal today, Anya. Make Michael broke.
Yeah, make Michael more broke than he already is.
There you go.
But no. And good morning, Robbie Gross. Good to have you back with us again for a second week in a row that you've commented.
Yes, indeed, and we will definitely be talking to Robbie a little more later on in this show, which will be good.
I think there's something that we're going to be promoting in the next segment. I don't know what it is.
It's going to be grossly awesome.
Yes.
No pun intended, or maybe pun intended. So, but Robbie's good people. Him and Carol have a great thing going with Sports on the Hill. I think it's going to be their 75th episode this Monday, so it's going to be a really strong thing, especially with lots to talk about in the DMV, whether it's the Nats manager situation, Redskins Cowboys tomorrow, fight night in Golden State last night with Bradley Beal and Draymond Green, and of course your Washington Capitals, which going into Saturday night against the Panthers, we thought after coming off of that overtime win, Michael, there would be maybe the turn of the corner. We just didn't think it was going to turn the way it went. Right.
Now, and of course it carried over, and I think the extended time in between the games kind of played a factor in that as well, because, I don't like having, I play once a week. I like playing every week. I don't like playing with 2 to 3 weeks in between a game, because you get rusty. Same goes for these guys. You had like 5 days off. What was it, Sunday, Monday? Yeah, 4 days off before you got to play your next game. And it kind of showed. But the big thing, and I watched both games. I actually got to watch the Vancouver game live. I watched the Florida game on DVR because work. So for us, when you look at it, it's like, okay, there's still a lot of pieces that aren't right. If I remember right, Burakovsky got injured in the Florida game, which that's now a blow because he was just starting to heat up. You're out without Niskanen. You're without Taylor Graovac. You're now potentially without Brett Connolly because they just called up Anthony Peluso yesterday.
Yeah.
You're getting the injury bug now, which in a way, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, in a way is actually a good thing rather than a bad thing. Yes, I'd rather not see the Caps lose 6-2 or 6-1, but at the same time, this is that what we were talking about before the season started. This is that adversity that the Capitals have not faced in quite a while. And you have to face adversity. I mean, I was thinking about this on my car ride home from work last night. When the Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup in 2010, they were on, I believe, an 8 or 10 game losing streak. And it was like early, mid part of the season, too. When the Penguins won the Cup in 2009, they were on a 12 game losing streak and went on to win the Cup that year. So just because we're having this stagnant thing right now where they're facing all this adversity, there's a lot of injuries, there's problems, it's still early. There's still a lot of kinks to get worked out. But this is why I've been excited for this season, because this is finally a season where they face adversity. not steamroll the entire league in a regular season.
Piggybacking on that you just said, first 2 of the 3 cups that Sidney Crosby has won with his Pittsburgh Penguins, they had to change the coach in February, in mid-season.
Yep.
And they won the cup both years. Dan Bilesman taking over from Michelle Therrien on the first one, and then Mike Sullivan coming in for Mike Johnston on the second one. It's so they've made coaching changes mid-season. Think about Chicago's last Stanley Cup run. Scott Darling bailed them out in the Nashville series, and then Corey Crawford caught fire after that. So adversity breeds championships. And Jay Beagle hit it on the head after the Vancouver game. If it's meant to be that we're going to hit adversity in October, then bring it on. I mean, this is what we need right now. And to think about this, they have not been under 500 since November of 2014. That rocked me to the core when I was sitting there, and I think it was either Courtney or Grant on Caps Overtime the other night brought that stat out, and I was floored. I was just like, but it also makes you think. This team has had such a level of consistency under Barry Trotz that even when they've had a bump in the road here and there, it's been a small bump. It hasn't been that big gully of a 5, 6, 7 game skid.
The last time I think they had that long skid was when Bruce Boudreau was coach.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like an 8-game, 9-game losing streak. And that was actually heading into the first Winter Classic that they participated in Pittsburgh. So, and actually, that's how I remember that stat about Chicago's losing streak going into the 2010 Cup Finals and Pittsburgh going into the 2009 Stanley Cup Finals, because when the Capitals were going for that losing streak with Bruce Boudreau, they had like 8 games, Chicago had like 10, Pittsburgh had 12, and they still won the Cup. So that's actually kind of where I thought about that at the same time too, because the Caps did go through that under Boudreau, although a much different team compared to then with Boudreau in 2010-11 and what we have now in 2017-18 under Barry Trotz.
Correct. And thinking about the Florida game, and they outshot them, I think 42-23 or something like that, and they had a lot of chances. But the thing is that game should have been, I mean, if this team is right, that game should have been a 2-point night. I mean, you're coming off, both teams are coming off of back-to-back games. The Caps won in overtime, and the Panthers lost late to the Penguins that night. And then you're coming off they lose their top goalie in Roberto Luongo getting his wrist caught in the net. James Reimer, who's is a solid goaltender.
He's going to be the
goalie, and
he's Luongo's replacement essentially.
Yeah, and they picked up Antoniemi off of waivers from the Penguins to be his backup. So Reimer will be getting the majority of the time, but Antoniemi gets one more crack at the NHL and possibly salvaging. I mean, he got left out to dry on back-to-back games all 3 times he played for Pittsburgh this year. So it's all going to be about this team needs to get back to playing simple hockey, not take care of the puck. I mean, they're taking way too many penalties at inopportune times. Their penalty kills, I think, at 73% right now, which is the bottom I think third to the bottom in the NHL right now, if not the bottom in the NHL. They are one of only 4 or 5 teams in the NHL with not averaging 30 shots a game. And it's something that needs to be addressed, that the turnovers, like you mentioned, it's not the rookies. I mean, Bally and Jews are going to have growing pains. Vrana's going to have some growing pains. Nathan Walker's going to have a misstep here and there. It's the veterans. Guys like John Carlson, practically a turnover machine in October. Brooks Orpik is, not getting back on defense in positions that need to be addressed. You need to get back to back to that near post to stop a wraparound. John Carlson has to be able to figure out when to step up and when not to step up when you're playing with different partners. It's just the dichotomy of mistakes that just keep piling up, and little by little it becomes from a molehill to a mountain to a glacier. And until this is nipped in the bud, and you thought the 5 days off you mentioned, and we documented it last year, that the Caps are miserable coming off a long layoffs. They've always played better when they have every other night.
And keep in mind, I saw somebody tweet out saying, "Oh, we hate the bye week." That wasn't the bye week. the bye week is not till January.
Well, and plus the bye weeks have been tweaked this year where teams that are coming off together, I think, are playing each other. So it's not going to be as crazy as it was last year where 2 or 3 teams would be taking it and then they'd be coming right off to with a team that's playing 4 and 7 nights and have that little bit of a rhythm going. So,
but real quick note, and then we'll go to commercial break because we do have an anticipation of something.
Yes.
Capitals right now are ranked 9th on power play. And as soon as this does it for me.
And that's a little exaggerated, too. Because
it's still early in the season.
Some of their power play goals have been coming off of the rush.
On the penalty kill, the Capitals are 29th.
Yep.
For shots against, the Capitals are... Where are the Caps? The Capitals are ranked 18th with 32.7 shots against, which is a lot higher than it used to be.
The shots for is the alarming one.
And the face-off winning percentage, the Capitals are 15th with a 50.5. So the Capitals have a 22.9% power play, a 73.3% penalty kill. They average 32.7 shots against and have a 50.5 percentage face-off winning percentage.
But going into last week, I think I brought it up last week that they had the worst differential on shots for shots against. It was like a 7-shot differential. They narrowed it down a little bit, obviously, with that big output against Florida. I mean, of course, shots on goal can be misleading at times. Depends on the quality of shots. I think Vegas had 7 goals on 18 shots or 22 shots last night against Colorado. I mean, that you want to talk about an anomaly. I think in the third segment I'm going to touch on this Vegas Golden Knight phenomenon that's rocking the NHL's world right now. But I got one more bone to pick, and it's something I keep coming back to, and that's the inconsistent and egregious officiating in the NHL. You had a slashing referendum to call more slashing penalties, more restraining penalties to make this game a better game, to eliminate some of the injuries. It's funny that Matt Niskanen and Andrei Burakovsky are lost for months due to slashes that were not called. Now watch the Florida game. The penalty was called for hooking, but right as Kelly Sutherland is blowing the whistle dead, the Florida player gets that extra slash in trying to get the puck away from Burakovsky behind the net where that penalty is meant. And I've always said Kelly Sutherland is one of the best officials in the league. So even the better ones are going to miss something. They're human. But on Thursday night, I ream into Frederic Leclerc. Dave Jackson takes him to a whole nother level of terrible. I'll go back almost 15 years to when the Capitals played Tampa Bay in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And in Game 5 of a 2-2 series, Olaf Kolzig follows through with his stick and shoots a puck down ice, clipping a Tampa Bay player in the face, blood gushing everywhere. He gets a 4-minute minor for following through his shot. And in the rule book it states that a high stick penalty is not called if it's part of a follow-through from a shot or a pass.
Actually, that was modified after Brian Berard.
But 15 years ago, that was
modified. That was modified because of what happened to Brian Berard.
But still, it's not a penalty. I mean,
it's been a penalty for a while now.
You have to watch.
Because
through of a shot or a pass is not a penalty.
Because I've seen people get called for quite a bit, especially in the hockey night in Canada games.
But I get to Dave Jackson. How you miss Brett Connolly getting blindside hit by Eric Goodbranson, who has been a notorious Caps injury guy who loves injuring Capitals. Just ask Marty Erat when he came over from Nashville in that brutal trade. The first couple games in as a Capital, he gets boarded from behind by Goodbranson. Then the next year, I think Jason Chimera got drilled from behind, and he actually came back in the game, I think, later and tried to fight Goodbranson. And then Vancouver, he takes out Connolly with 2 hits. The second one was more of a 50-50 thing. I wasn't as big egregious as the first one, where it's practically a blindside to the neck area. And then Tom Wilson challenges him to a fight when it's 6-1. and it was just a brouhaha. And he tries to put him into a front face lock and try to choke him out instead of trying to fight him like a man. So Eric Branson, grow a set, please, and stop trying to injure players. You just came off of a 1-game suspension. Act like a top 4 defenseman that was a former first-round pick, not a borderline goon. Thank you very much.
I find it funny that Gabranson is not getting a single hearing, where Wilson got 2 suspensions in the preseason. 1 cost him the first 4 games of the regular season. But with that, we will be back after the break. When we come back, we'll be talking more hockey, because that's what we do. Looking for some pre-Thanksgiving fun? Then look no further than to DerpyCon. DerpyCon, which is taking place at the Hyatt Regency, Morristown in Morristown, New Jersey, from November 17th to 19th. Come see special guests like David Yost, Walter Jones, Todd Havercorn, and so many more. For more information and to purchase tickets, visit DerpyCon.com.
Call Robbie. This is your cue. Call.
And what's that little thing in front of you?
Yes? Attention hockey fans, the Experience Hockey Talk is on
That's only
Patreon.
if we have something else going on.
No, that's his microphone.
Yeah.
This is my microphone.
Interviews and
To
so
that.
much more. You can join the TXHT Patreon community at patreon.com/TXHT_hockey.
If I told him to call during the break.
There you go. Cool.
Robbie? Hold on, Robbie. Hold on 1 sec. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. And it's actually really funny to watch the Facebook live feed with the 10-second delay that it has, because I'm mocking Dixon scratching his beard, and I'm just over-exaggerating it on the Facebook live. But ladies and gentlemen, we are now joined from Sports on the Hill podcast, Robbie Gross. Robbie, welcome to the Experience Hockey Talk.
Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on this morning and talk a little bit of Caps hockey with you all. It's been a rough 8 games or so. We've lost about 6 of them, so it's a little troubling, but I'll help you guys break down some of the thoughts that I had about the last 8 games, and we'll also talk about the big 75th episode of my show that's on Monday, and I'm hoping we can get 2 victories between now and then, and it will make that show a lot better. We've got a big game, obviously, against Edmonton tonight, and then Calgary tomorrow night. So it'll be an exciting time.
And it's interesting because for Calgary, I actually, as a part-time job, I actually do live event operator, and I actually got to do the Calgary Flames St. Louis Blues game Wednesday night. And watching the Blues, or the Flames, we'll be playing the Blues later on, but seeing the Flames for a full game before they play the Capitals, it was very interesting to note, one, that they have, Edmonton, you got to deal with that speed with that team, but that's a team that's also struggling right now. Calgary is another team that has a lot of speed, will be without Jaromir Jagr, who's on injured reserve right now. But this is also a team that can still burn you without Jaromir Jagr, who would be their slowest player on the team. So these are definitely going to be 2 very tough games for the Capitals, because you're going to be seeing an Edmonton team who needs to win just as bad as the Caps do, plus a Calgary team who is trying to go more on the upward swing of things. What are your thoughts on those teams? Especially seeing how they are in the standings as well, along with the Capitals.
Yeah, I think you point on some important things. the Edmonton is a young team, obviously led by Connor McDavid, and their speed is lethal. One interesting fact, though, that I saw was we've done pretty well against this team overall. Now, I know that this is a very different team than they've seen before. The Capitals have won 3 out of their last 4 games versus the Oilers, but they only scored 2 or fewer goals in 3 out of 4 of those meetings. So they split their last 6 meetings in Edmonton with 3 wins apiece. So we've played them obviously pretty well, but they're a young, new, and very different Edmonton Oilers than a lot of those other games, obviously. So it'll be an interesting matchup. I like Connor McDavid. I have a lot of friends that are diehard Oilers fans. Some of my closest friends actually here in Washington. One of them was born in Edmonton, and so he's kind of turned all of us. So I actually tend to root for Edmonton as my West Coast team. I do like the Vegas Knights a little bit, the new expansion team, but Edmonton has always been, at least for me growing up, my sort of West Coast team. And so it'll definitely be interesting to see that matchup. I'm throwing a party actually for it. We call the Captain Costume Party over at my house, and people will be dressed up in Halloween outfits watching that Edmonton game starting at 10 o'clock. So it'll definitely be a fun night. I hope that the Capitals obviously win, but of all the teams, Edmonton is the team I would say I get the least upset when we lose to. I'm actually going to the Edmonton game versus the Capitals in the upcoming weeks in Washington with my dad, which I always really enjoy doing. So it'll be fun. No matter what happens, I'll get to see the rematch.
Well, I know with Edmonton's concerned, I know the Caps had a very inauspicious debut at Rogers Center last year. Connor McDavid had his October highlight at the expense of John Carlson last year. A lot of players can say that they've had their October moment at his expense. The way everything's made up, and we've talked about the injuries both on your show as well on this show, Robbie. Where do you see Barry Trotz making the right adjustments to get this team on the right track? Because personally, I think the defense needs to just play. They can't be burning out Carlson and Orpik and Orlov right now, and just let these young kids take their lumps and give them a chance to make a play. I mean, Madison Valley, his track record speaks for itself from Kelowna to Hershey to here. And Jews, I mean, we've talked about how great he was in Hershey at the second half of last year, and you're starting to see a little bit of the glimpses that everyone was raving about. Their upsides are big. It's just a matter of letting them, at this point, take their lumps. What do you think defensively, how the adjustments need to be made?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right that you can't burn out your veterans. The injury bug is very serious. I know that people kind of want to scoff at that sort of next man up, but in hockey, it's hard when you aren't used to a system. I mean, Barry Trotz worked with people. If you remember last year, Dmitry Orlov at the very beginning didn't look very good because he lost his first season with Barry Trotz due to injury himself. So it takes some time to get used to the NHL system, to Barry Trotz's system specifically. And I think you're right. You got to play some of these young guys more, and you'll start to see some of these lopsided losses to Vancouver. Now, losing a Nicholas Backstrom who makes your offense run, and losing some of these other key players, it's definitely nothing to scoff at because Burakovsky, if you remember last year, was really coming into his own and why we gave him that big contract. And I think, Backstrom, Ovechkin says it himself, Ovechkin thinks Backstrom is the best player on the Capitals. Now, they are tied for my favorite players of all time. I love Nicky and Ovi. I always rep one of them whenever I go to a game. But it's tough without Nicholas. Even if he's not on Ovechkin's line, it puts so much pressure having two sort of 1A, 1B lines. And then, obviously, when Ovechkin and Kuzi are out there and Nick is not on that second line or first line or whatever you want to call it, it definitely changes the dynamic for the Capitals and for the other team's defense. And I think that we've been working too much in our zone. And I think that, especially with having such young defensemen, we got to get it out of the zone much quicker and start attacking more and see some of that offensive upside that Juice was showing for a couple of these games. So I believe that the Capitals can definitely turn it around. A lot of people were freaking out, being like, the Caps haven't won any games this season. I was like, well, the Caps are 4-5-1, I think. So they definitely won a bunch of games, and it's definitely been it's been tough to see some of these losses. The 4-6-1, I think. 4-5-1. Right.
4-5-1. They played 10 games. And actually, being how you bring that up, I was watching the New York Rangers feed. Steve Alaquette, who does their intermission and pre and post game stuff, he was saying that what the teams need to do, and the Rangers are a team that are struggling right now. They just won their third game of the season like the other day. They're 3-6-2 in 11 games. And the thing that Steve Alaquette said is that when you're a team, you have to break everything up into sections of 10 because it's an 82-game schedule, and what you want to do is you always want to try to get, at least 6 to 8 points every 10 games. Because if you do that, you want to ideally be around like 95 points because that's what you're going to need eventually to get into the playoffs, especially with how competitive it is. Right now in 10 games, the Caps are 4-5-1 with 9 points. They got 9 points in 10 games. That's still really good when you look at it from a points perspective, trying to get into the playoffs, even though technically right now they're 3 spots out of the final wild card spot, which Philadelphia holds. Now, when you look at that, you have to look at it from that perspective of that. Plus, not only that, you mentioned the injuries to guys like Burakovsky and Niskanen. Backstrom, I think, could be back tonight because he was out sick. So hopefully he's back. But one of the great things is that if the Caps can stay with 9 points, like maybe get a 10th point or something every 10 games, especially by the time end of December comes around when Burakovsky and Niskanen are back, Merry Christmas. There's your Christmas present, getting those two guys back in your lineup.
Yeah, I actually think that you probably need about 12 points for 10 in the Metro. And the reason I say that is, we have 9, but we find ourselves in the second to last places. The aforementioned Rangers are the only team that are below us. But, you got Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Columbus, Islanders, Philadelphia, Carolina, and they all have above 9 or higher. So I agree with what you're saying that 10 points should, and in most divisions I think it would. And I think some of these other teams hopefully will fall off as the games continue to pile up. But still, it's a dangerous division. A lot of talent that's been spread around. Metro I thought was one of the best divisions last year, if not the best division. And I think that it's shaping up to be even harder this year. But I agree. I was listening to you guys earlier talking about going through adversity and how important that is for any team. And if we remember, the team that got us there in '98, which I unfortunately went to Game 4 of the Stanley Cup, and saw the cup in the then known as the MCI Center, but it's frustrating because we got there as a 4 seed, and I think a lot of people forget that. There was like, President's Trophy, we bust and do all these things. I think, if we were to squeak in, actually, honestly, I think the best position for us would be able to be the 7 seed, go to the Atlantic, beat up the Atlantic teams, let the Metro teams beat each other up. We faced them enough, and then we'd only have to face one Metro team at the end in the Eastern Conference Final, which would mean that we made it to the Eastern Conference Final, which is something that we really need to do for Ovechkin, because honestly, Ovechkin, as I was talking about before, is one of my all-time favorite players, and we owe it to him to at least get to an Eastern Conference Finals, if not a Stanley Cup, and it would be unfair for us not to. So I hope this is the year where we take those lumps, we maybe fall to a 7 seed, and then we shock the world and we get hot and we get healthy and we get good goaltending right at the right time, beat up on some Atlantic teams, and somehow find our way into the Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, I hate to break your heart on this one, but you want to be the 8th seed to get into the Atlantic Division right now. And the reason for that is that right now the Tampa Bay Lightning are 9-1-1 with 19 points. Pittsburgh is first in the Metro Division with a 7-3-1 record with 15 points. So the only way the Caps would be able to get into the Atlantic Division for the playoffs is if they got the 8th seed, which Philadelphia currently holds.
Yeah, but I'll be honest right now, I know that is how the current standings are. I don't necessarily think that Tampa Bay will be the number 1 team. I unfortunately think that Pittsburgh was more likely to be the number 1 team when come at the end of the season, with them getting hotter at the end. I know Tampa Bay's been really hot as of late with their goal scoring, including having a guy that seems to score every night and has been leading the league in points. It's been definitely a rough. I don't like Tampa Bay, so it's been a rough couple of weeks watching them for me. But I don't see the Atlantic team giving the number 1 seed overall once the whole season is said and done?
Well, I know that the Capitals wouldn't mind it. I think it's NBC's dream matchup would be to have Washington and Pittsburgh actually in the Eastern Conference Final, and the Caps have played Tampa Bay really well. I mean, they were up 3-1 on them, and they're only meeting this year until everything started reeling on them. And to that aspect, I want to get your take on if you're coaching, general managing, if you're running the Washington Capitals right now, Robbie, what's your lineup? Because I think there's some guys playing in positions they shouldn't be right now, and there's some guys that should get a look in different roles. I mean, what if you're getting your lineup set, and that's including maybe bringing up a guy from Hershey or bringing up someone who's scratched or maybe signing someone off the street. What's your lineup right now? Especially, I mean, knowing that you don't have Burakovsky for another 6 to 7 weeks. You don't have Niskanen for another 3 to 4 weeks, but mainly forward lines because there's a lot of little intricacies that could be addressed if a certain guy maybe gets put in a different role. I mean, I think there's some different combinations that should be looked at, but I'll let you go first on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The problem is there's obviously not a lot of chemistry right now with some of these young guys and some of these people that have been there for a while. So there's sort of 2 different ways that you could play that. You could have more like standard NHL lines, people that have been there before, be your top 2 lines and just sort of move people up and then move some of the AHLers down and see if the young guys can all mix and match together, kind of like almost having like a Hershey Bears lines or the Capitals lines, to see if some of the chemistry from previous years you can try to carry forward. Now it's tough. There's injuries throughout the lineup, and they're sort of messing you up in a lot of different positions, you know, and it does, definitely, my opinion changes, obviously, if you have Nicholas Backstrom versus if you don't, you know, if he's sick tonight. But obviously, you got to keep, you know, Nick and Kuzi as your top centers, and I think, you know, what they've been doing has been well. I'd like to see a little bit more of Nathan Walker, and maybe Tom Wilson needs to be demoted a little bit. I like Tom Wilson, but he's getting an awful lot of time, and he's making some stupid plays. I think, especially in that Vancouver game, he was trying to, you know, hit somebody, in my mind, maybe even a little bit dirty behind the goal crease, and then he misses the hit, he hurts himself, he then goes after the guy. Yeah, he got a lot of penalties there in that last game. He's been getting a lot of penalties in general, and I love Tom Wilson. You know, we talk about Tom Wilson a lot on the Sports Hill podcast, and he's actually Carroll's favorite hockey player. And I think that he's a great hockey player, and he showed a lot of offensive upside when he was younger, but we haven't seen the scoring from him. And so I wonder if demoting him a little bit and putting him on the 3rd or 4th line and moving, you know, Nathan Walker up and moving some of these other young guys up and seeing if you get some chemistry, I think that could make some sense. I think that you're right that we're playing a lot of our veteran defensive men too much, so I think you have to split veteran defensive player on each of the lines and a new young guy on each of the lines. And I know they've tried to do that a little bit, but I think they need to roll all 3 defensive lines more and roll all 4 offensive lines, especially if you're trying to build chemistry with this young team. I think Trotz sometimes depends on his top lines a little bit too much, and I don't want to see them burnt out if we want to see them have a run later in the season. Well,
I definitely say the Wilson thing was all stemming off of Gabranson hitting Connolly, blindsiding Connolly, and it was 6-1 at that point. Wilson was trying to make sure it was more of a team thing. I'm actually cool with Wilson going after as long as he doesn't go over the line and get suspended. Going after Gabranson, making him want to fight and all that, just answering for what I mean, you take the 17 minutes. Oh well, I mean that's that game's pretty much a lost cause already. But what I'm looking at is Tom Wilson's playing left wing. He's a right wing in my eyes. Vrana, even though Ovi, Kuzi, and Vrana arguably has been the best line for this team, Vrana in my eyes is a left wing, not a right wing. I'd almost put Ovi and Backstrom back together because as good as they've been offensively, the Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Vrana line, they've been turning the puck over a lot in the neutral zone and in the losses especially. I'd have Ovi and Backstrom back together, and I'd put Tom Wilson with them and let them be the space eaters for Backstrom. So Backstrom can do what he does as being arguably the best overall player on the Capitals team, and that's create and make things happen for himself. I'd put Kuzi and Oshie back together, and I'd even put Nathan Walker up there to be that grunt, that little speed grunt that can go in there and dig. Third line, I'd actually go with the Hershey Bear line. I don't know if Riley Barber's waiver stat is. I would have called Riley Barber up and put him with Stevenson and Vrana, be like a kid line, and then I'd put Eller down on line 4 with Beagle and DSP. So you have the 2 centers on the 4th line, and Alex Chason, I would give him his future endeavors because aside from that one diving play in Detroit, he's been absolutely garbage.
And I just want to throw in there, like, as you're talking about what you would do if you're line,
together.
I actually wrote up when the Capitals are healthy lineup. Honestly, I have Tom Wilson with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov or Ovechkin and Backstrom. And here's the thing about Tom Wilson: if you watch, and I say this as somebody who also plays, and people have seen Street Shark games put up on the Facebook page and stuff like that. As somebody who plays and studies the game, I've been watching all these guys closely, and you can see since Tom Wilson has gone back in the lineup from that 4-game suspension, he has been making more efforts to shoot more on net. He hasn't gotten that finish just yet, and I think having 4 games to miss the season due to suspension, that kind of takes you off your groove because you missed 4 games.
Before you get to your line, I just want to put a preface on the lines I just put out there, as if proceeding if Brett Connolly's out long term, that's the way I would do the lines with Burakovsky. Or I've been out. Continue.
Yeah, but I agree about Chason. Get rid of him.
I trade him for Brooks Lake.
Yeah, he's with Los Angeles now. But Tom Wilson has been making that collective effort. Plus, and I've said this several times before. I don't think I've ever said it really truly on air. But Adam Oates destroyed that kid. He should have never have played for Adam Oates. Because that's why Tom Wilson's still kind of the way that he is right now, because he has that programming from Adam Oates that Barry Trotz, the last now entering 4 years now, has been trying to get out of Tom Wilson and get him back to the way he was in the juniors, where, yeah, you're a big physical player, but you're a big physical player who can score and be like a Milan Lucic or a Tomas Holmstrom or a Johan Franzen type player. And that's what Barry Trotz is trying to get Tom Wilson to be again.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the points that you guys are making. I think that the lineup actually makes a lot of sense that you're talking about. I would still put Tom Wilson, I think, on the second line. And maybe just, if you're going to reunite lines, I really liked it when Backstrom, TJ Oshie, and Ovechkin were all on the same line.
That was a good line.
Huge firepower, but at this point, I think we need a jump start. And you just got to hope that Kuzi, Tom Wilson, and whoever you want to put at left wing, maybe it would be Verona. I just hope that they mesh and figure things out until some of the other injured Capitals can come back.
I honestly don't like Verona with Ovechkin, because the games that I was watching, like, you would see Ovechkin throw really good passes to Vrana, and Vrana was just not connecting on him at all. Like, and those are plays that, Tom Wilson has connected on for the Caps before when he's been with Ovechkin. Burakovsky's connected on those when he's been with Ovechkin. I think even Connolly's connected on those. But for some reason, Vrana just isn't clicking with Ovechkin from what I've seen so far this season. But, it's still a young season.
Yeah, and to your point, Michael, it's Vrana, like I said, I think he's more of a left wing. I think he's out of position playing the right wing on Ovi and Kuzi's line, and not just in the offensive aspect, but also defensive. And that's the big monkey wrench with the Capitals lineup, is Ovechkin is more of a left wing with a right shot. But, Brett Connolly and Burakovsky have shown more of a diversity to be able to play either wing a little more consistently than Vrana. Vrana's getting a dose of reality playing the opposite wing than what he's played through his junior day and is, over in the Czech Republic, and then also playing in Hershey, mainly been a left wing. It's all about just getting these guys in positions of comfortability right now and just going with it. And like you said, Robbie, with Ovi and Backstrom and Oshie, and even when Backstrom was out that first month recovering from his leg injury a couple years back, Ovi, Kuzi, and Oshie was the hottest line in hockey in that one October that Kuzi had the 5-point night in Edmonton that one night. So it's just the little things, and everybody talks about Trotz. with the young players. Look back when he was with Nashville with Philip Forsberg. Not really giving him much of a chance. Peter Laviolette probably saved Philip Forsberg's time in Nashville. So it's just a lot of little things. And like you said, you get 2 games in Alberta with 2 points each. A lot of things can turn quite quickly in this season, coming home for some serious home cooking in the next 8 weeks.
Yeah. Well.
So, I think there's a lot that can happen between now and the end of the season. It's hard to really know. And I do like playing some of the young guys more. There's obviously a risk, but hopefully they can bring some speed into the lineup, especially against these young teams that we're facing in Canada. I definitely think the speed's going to be helpful, and I think we got to really roll all 4 lines if we want a chance, because we've got 2 games back-to-back again, which has been our Achilles heel so far. We haven't done particularly well, and Groovy hasn't played up to the state that he was last year, but I think defensively we're leaving him out to dry in too many circumstances, and we seem to play a lot better in front of Holtby, and I'd like to see the Capitals play the same way that they play in front of Holtby, in front of Grubauer too. Now Grubauer does need to make some timely saves as well. I don't think it's all on the defense, but I definitely, it's frustrating to watch a sort of a different Capital team, and I don't know, it's possibly because it's the second half of a lot of these back-to-backs, and so they're tired, and they've got to find a way to conserve energy, especially on these long road trips, because it's going to be important to win some of these games on the road. Our home cooking hasn't been quite as good for us this year, which I hope that we can turn around before I get to go to a game against Edmonton I was talking about earlier. I'd like to obviously see a victory in person this year with my dad, as I always like to do, and I'm excited. I usually shoot a little video for Sports on the Hill podcast whenever I go to a game, and I do a little vlog about it. But it's definitely going to be an interesting couple of games here in these next 2 games. I'm really looking forward to talking to you, Michael, on about 7:20 on this upcoming Monday on my 75th episode. We're going to break down a whole bunch of different topics.
You want to know something? This is the perfect thing. It's your 75th episode, and my jersey number is 75. So how about that?
That's almost too perfect. And so we really enjoyed having Bernie on our show a couple of weeks ago, and we really think that you guys know what you're talking about on the hockey, and think that it's a great show. I've been enjoying watching on Facebook Live these last couple of weeks, and it'll be an interesting partnership, and I'm really looking forward to bringing you on, and I know it'll be an interesting second hour, since I actually, on my podcast, talk a little bit about a bunch of different topics. The first half an hour, or 40 minutes or so, will be on the Caps, as it always is, but then we'll also talk about the Wizards, who are also playing the West Coast. So I've been very tired this week, because I've been staying up for this Canada trip, but also the Wizards on a California trip, because the horses are in town in Washington, and so it's been a lot of double dipping, a lot of late games, and a lot of heartbreaking losses for both teams. So I'm hoping that the Wizards are able to rebound on Sunday and get a win, and the Caps are able to get a couple of wins here on this back-to-back Saturday and Sunday, so that way it'll be a little bit more of a chipper show for our 75th episode. And of course, we've got Dallas week, with Dallas coming to town tomorrow for Washington Redskins, and that's always a big game, and I know that Bernie is a big Redskins supporter as well. And so I'm looking forward to that matchup, and I hope that we can get a victory to get that bad taste of the Monday Night Football loss out of my mouth. And so it should be a really fun show. And we do a pick-em for a third hour, so we do a 3-hour show now. So we pick all the NFL games as well. So we talk a lot of different sports, but I love how you guys break down hockey from a bunch of different angles and a bunch of different leagues, and so it's always fun to talk hockey with you guys.
Well, it's great having you on the show there, Robbie. You and CP3 do a great job on the Sports on the Hill podcast. We look forward to hearing you and Michael on Monday night. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your show.
Yep. Thank you, Robbie. And with that, we'll be right back from the break.
Looking for some pre-Thanksgiving fun? Then look no further.
All right, Robbie, I've got to hang up right now. But thanks for coming on, and shoot me a text tomorrow night for Monday, all right?
Come see special guests.
Good stuff, Robbie.
Walter Jones, Kyle Havercorn, and so
Thanks, bud.
more. For more information and to purchase tickets, visit derpycon.com today.
Josh Nozzles. So we have Chandler Stevenson.
Attention hockey fans, the Experience Hockey Talk is on
why we call
Patreon.
it Anthony
Come join the
Foley, so.
exclusive TXHT community
I
today
just
for
have a
access to
feeling.
exclusive episodes,
I'm trying to figure if
interviews,
Barber
and
has to
so
go
much
through waivers
more.
or not. That's
You
the
can join
thing.
TXHT
He actually scored a goal there, huh?
at
I think
patreon.com
Barber has to go through waivers,
/TXHT
and I don't know if they want to take a chance
hockey.
bringing him up right now.
I don't know. I would have to look.
I think he signed a new deal.
I would have to look on cap right
I think he signed a new deal.
It's either that or it's age.
Yeah. Well, Boyd has to also, which is something that, or Boyd maybe been the call up.
And I agree with the Chase on. I'm not liking what
Trading
I'm
for
seeing.
Brooks Light. I mean, Light knows the system here, and you need another guy to play center and wing with Grayback out. All right. Just thinking outside the box, like way outside the box. A bunch of hockey pucks right now. Used ones.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, Serious Hockey Talk for serious hockey fans. We want to thank the bands Crimson Orchard and I Shine for the music that you hear coming into the show and during the commercial breaks. Also, special thanks out to Robbie Gross from Sports on the Hill podcast for coming on our last segment. Of course, as he mentioned, you'll be able to hear me on the show this Monday night at 7:20 p.m. talking Capitals hockey. Like he said, he hopes that there's 2 wins, or at least maybe 3 points. If we can get 3 points out of the weekend, that would be good for the Caps.
Gotta get something scoring wise, and we talked about the youth movement with everyone trying to get young and everything. And I'm real quick on the farm side of things. Hershey Bears are 1-5-1 to start their season, so organizationally, it's not been a strong start for either of the teams. I know South Carolina thinks 3-0, but I don't think there's many Caps prospects on the horizon down there because everyone's had to be shuttled up through to Hershey and the Washington with all the injuries. All of a sudden, they're still without their top 2 goalies. Phoenix Copley and Vitek Vanacek are both out still with injury down there. So they've been leaning a lot on Parker Milner and Adam Carlson. But the youth movement in the NHL was never more prevalent than on Thursday night. 7 guys scored their first NHL goal. Kevin Weeks was very busy on NHL Tonight saying, "Welcome to the National." And I think he wasn't around for Chandler Stevenson's, but I think Darren Heinen, I think's his name, actually had his first 2 NHL goals for the Bruins. Curtis McDermott of LA, Owen Tippett, who was a number 10 overall pick for Florida this year. Zach Mitchell and Luke Kunin both scored for the Minnesota Wild. Kalle Kosila for Anaheim, and of course the aforementioned Chandler Stevenson for the Capitals all scored their first NHL goal on Thursday night. And usually it happens most times. The Capital usually scores their first goal in a blowout loss. So, and then Chris DiDomenico, who's blown all over the world from the Swiss leagues to European leagues to the ECHL, the AHL. He's like 30 years old. He scored his first NHL goal last night for Ottawa. So there are a lot of guys denting the twine for the first time in the NHL. So
Now, throwing this out there real quick, because you're talking
that's
about
why that's why I suggested the trade.
Yeah. So we're going over some numbers.
Financially, it works.
Yeah, you save $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
But right now it's like this is like a weird spot, and I actually kind of disagree with one point that Robbie said, and that's Tampa Bay won't be at the top of the Eastern Conference. I think they will, especially.
They're playing fantastic.
Especially, and here's the key point. If Steven Stamkos stays healthy and he plays the entire season, which he hasn't done the last few seasons, Tampa Bay is number 1 in the Eastern Conference, hands down. They have great goaltending in Andrei Vasilevsky. They have a really good defense. They got a good defensive prospect in that Jonathan Duran trade.
Sergachev is a beast.
And then Kucherov has become the goal scorer that he is the last few seasons in the absence of Steven Stamkos. You still got a great core with Taylor Johnson and amongst other players on that team. I'm not going to name every single player on that team. But, this is a team that can go number 1 in the Eastern Conference, with Pittsburgh going number 2 in the Eastern Conference.
Well, I mean, you have Steven Stamkos. The non-surprising fact is he's leading the league in scoring. The surprising fact is he has 4 goals and 17 assists for 21 points. Steven Stamkos has become the wizard with the puck. But when you have a Nikita Kucherov burying the puck like he is with 12 goals, that's not a problem to have those assists just rack up, because like I've always said with the Capitals power play, you have that other one-time option on the power play, and they set up a similar 1-3-1 because Adam Oates went down there and they got their power play back on track after he left here. Stamkos is in that Ovi office, but Kucherov is in the opposite office. So whoever's on the point on the power play has that wonderful option to go to Exhibit A or Exhibit B, and either one's going to be launching a one-timer that the goaltender isn't going to see, especially if he's being screened in front by the I mean, when they had Brian Boyle last year, my goodness, you put that tree trunk, last couple of years, we put that tree trunk in front of the net. The goalie ain't going to see much of anything.
Well, why do you think I've always been a big proponent of putting Tom Wilson on the power play? Because Tom Wilson's a 6'4", 215-pound kid. You know, I would say put him on the power play and get his stick on that puck as much as possible to screen the goalie, get the garbage goals on the power play. I think that would be a great fit for the Washington Capitals.
If you have enough talent like they do, you could afford putting a Tom Wilson in front of the net. I mean, and it also spaces out of your Backstrom Kuznetsov drop to the second unit, which would probably be Kuznetsov, because who else who are you going to take off for him? You're not going to take TJ Oshie off for him. You're not going to take Ovi off for him, and you aren't going to take John Carlson off of him, even though we've been proponents for putting Dmitry Orlov on that. But either Carlson or Orlov are going to be your defenseman on that, or Niskanen are going to be your defenseman on that power play. So Wilson's going to be at the expense of one of the two centers, is going to be a guy that's just going to park himself in front of the net. And that's the one big issue I've always had with the Caps power play, is the guy down below the goal line doesn't get in front of the net enough. And when they do get in front of the net, Carlson usually blows one by the goalie, or Ovi, that extra quarter of a second, has that chance for the pass to go over to Ovi for the one-timer, and usually hits the twine a lot more frequently.
Yeah, and not only that, but, you know, size.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at what teams that Boston, they'll take Zdeno Chara and put him in front of them.
Especially late in the game, yeah.
Yeah.
That's been helped with...
Nashville used to do it, and I think Montreal doesn't, but when Nashville had him, Shea Weber would go in front of the net sometimes.
They would, but having a shot
time.
like Shea Weber, you don't want that in front of the net.
Zdeno Chara has a shot, too.
Yeah.
Zdeno Chara has a bomb.
But I think the development of Torrey Krug and now Charlie McAvoy gives you that option a little more frequently.
And then Winnipeg with Dustin Byfuglien.
The buff.
You know, he goes in front of the net. And actually, a friend of mine actually said something really funny on Facebook, which is Matt Sundin had Ty Domi. Wayne Gretzky had Marty McSorley. Sidney Crosby has the referees to protect them. Dustin Byfuglien will take on anyone on skates. Because Dustin Byfuglien is not just a defenseman, he's also a forward, and he can protect himself.
Well, he
creates a lot of chaos.
Well, then pretty much you can say Mark Scheifele and Patrick Laine have Dustin Byfuglien now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Gretzky had, even back in the day, I mean, Dave Lumley and Dave Semenko, and then obviously Marty McSorley after that. So he's definitely had his share of guys watching his back. But when Wayne was Wayne, you didn't need anyone watching his back, because he put 5 points up blindfolded.
I mean, look at also like the old school Philadelphia Flyers when they had Bobby Clark. Bobby Clark would fight you, but they didn't want him to fight you because they wanted him to be the goal scorer that he was. You know, he had guys like Bill Barber and Paul Holmgren and, you know, a whole bunch of other guys to protect him that were there to do the fighting for him, just so he could be the playmaker and the goal scorer.
Well, and also when they were able to bring Reggie Leach over to be that sniper, that was what made that team more complete. Barber was able to be more of a scoring threat, and then you have the hound dog Bob Kelly, Dave Schulte, all those guys also they could throw. Mel Bridgman.
Pretty much everybody on that team
Rick
could throw
McLeish.
down.
I mean, you just throw them all down. I mean, we're going Broad Street Bully alumni game here. I mean, you just go Dave Brown in the 80s and early 90s too. So it definitely...
my dad, who's been a Flyers fan ever since they came into the league, since the Flyers came into the league, because my dad's older than the actual franchise, he said that if you could do a Philadelphia Flyers alumni team and they would physically beat the crap out of any other team's alumni team, just because they all had guys that could just physically wear you down, not just in a fighting sense, but just in how to play the game. I mean, the Flyers were the first team to actually beat the Soviet Union. But not only that, but make the Soviet Union just get off the ice and go, no, we don't want to play these guys. They play too rough.
Well, then also having a rock in the net, like Bernie Parent, definitely made that a lot easier to take a penalty here and there if they had to send their statement, to be able to have that guy in the crease making the saves that need in the timely fashion that Bernie Parent did, that led him to those 2 Stanley Cups. So definitely an interesting conglomerate there in the city of brotherly love, which sometimes can be anything but lovely for our opponents.
I saw the great story of my first ever game up there. Yeah, Flyers-Rangers exhibition game. I saw 3 Ranger fans in Ranger jerseys. One of them left on stretcher.
Oh.
Welcome to Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the great one, actually, when I went up to New York, again, to see the Flyers play the Rangers. There's a
Flyer fans left on
No,
stretchers.
actually, I was wearing my, this was actually going into Ovechkin's sophomore year. And I was wearing my Ovechkin jersey, and the Flyers actually blew out the Rangers in a preseason game, and my dad and I were talking about it. And the funny thing is that we were talking about how good the Flyers looked, and these Ranger fans behind me was like, oh man, we got ourselves a bunch of Flyer fans here. And I look at the jersey I'm wearing, look at my dad, look back at the jersey I'm wearing, look at my dad and go, Dad, am I a Flyers fan? And he goes, no. And I'm very disappointed in you because you're a Capitals fan.
Well, real quick, a couple quick hits before we get out of here.
Yep.
Tonight we got Edmonton, we got Calgary. I think more so contain the speed tonight in Edmonton. I don't think they have Draisaitl back, so that's going to be a little bit of a breather. But they played. They got their offense going a little bit against Dallas a couple nights back. I think power play is going to be a big key in the Calgary game tomorrow night. They've been able to score a lot of power play goals, especially up in Calgary the last couple of years up there, but also containing their speed with Gaudreau and Monahan and Matthew Tkachuk. And then I'll be very interested to see how the Vegas Golden Knights do this week, starting this week. They are on fire.
Shutout.
8 wins equals what the Capitals did in their expansion year back in 1974-75 with 8 wins
For
in the
an
whole
entire
season. They've done it in 9 games. And James Neal scored 7 goals in the first 9 games, the most a guy has scored on an expansion team. But now they go on a 6-game Eastern road trip. Now let's see what Gerard Gallant can weave, what magic he can weave, being that they're on their 3rd goalie, Oscar Danks, right now. Subban's out for another month, and Fleury's out indefinitely with concussion. So kudos to the Vegas Golden Knights on a very strong start. But, of course, we detailed in depth with the expansion draft process, you got probably the best team to start a franchise with in the modern era.
Yep. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to go to patreon.com/TXHT_hockey. This past week, I had Dan Rice, the feature writer of the National Women's Hockey League, on the show. Great preview for the National Women's Hockey League. I highly recommend join the TXHT community right now. Just get on there, join right now, because in about an hour and a half, the NWHL season starts. You want to listen to that before the season starts for them.
Good luck in New Jersey today, NWHL.
Yep. And then also this week, working on getting an author who wrote a book called Red Rising about the Washington Capitals. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next week, we will see you on the ice.
Attention hockey fans looking for serious hockey talk? Then listen to the Experience Hockey Talk every Saturday at 11 a.m.
By the way, Bernie,
Sports Network.
Riley
Michael
Barber,
Bernie, as they look back
waiver
to the past
exempt.
week for the Washington Capitals, the NHL,
And he's got a
NWHL, and so much more.
695K cap hit.
Well, and cap hit won't matter right now since Niskin is on a long term. So
And
Well,
so is Burakovsky.
yeah,
If they were to get rid of Chase on,
it all depends on 50 contracts too. Oh no, he's under contract. My bad. I'm
Yeah.
thinking one thing I'd like to know is there's another one is.